Right.
Why is practice testing and testing with your accommodation even more important for students in this category than others? I mean, I think we all agree that practice testing is incredibly important, but many students with extended time often try to blow that off during practice testing. We administer so many practice tests a year at libraries and other community events. And at almost every one, I find a student who took the test, the whole test, and at the end we're scoring and they're looking at their score and they seem upset, and I look at their score sheet and they didn't get to half the questions on every section. I say, do you have accommodations? Yeah, but my mom said just come and take the test like this. Like, no, that's a terrible idea.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
What is your experience with helping students make the most of the practice testing opportunity to leverage their accommodations effectively?
Yeah, so that one that you pointed out, Mike, is probably the most important one, which is just having accurate scores, and especially in a diagnostic test or the first baseline test, you want to know where you're really starting from. And if you're taking that test without the accommodations that you'll ultimately have, you're not really getting a fair look at where you're starting from and what your true needs are. So performance tracking is kind of the first and most important reason to practice like you'll play. And then the other reason is because even with accommodations, these tests have a whole set of unique obstacles for each student, right? And that's why one-on-one tutoring is probably so popular with test prep and SAT and ACT, because everyone approaches these tests in kind of a unique and fundamentally different way. So figuring out how you are going to use your 50% extra time, or how you are going to use your 100% extra time, or your additional breaks, or your non-standard room is important. And practicing for that, figuring out, how is the science section going to feel different maybe after 5 hours of a test rather than after 3.5 hours of a test.
Absolutely.
Well, the one thing that I notice, and I'm assuming you guys have observed this as well, would be the student who gets extra time and then chooses not to use it.
That's
and
right.
I tend to find that more with students with ADD, the impulsivity and the speed. Like, I'm moving fast. It's like, no, I need you to slow down. Don't rush, like that notion of they're actually working at like hyperspeed. And it's like, no, you get this extra time. Let's make sure we use it to our advantage. You guys observe that?
Yeah, especially because they're not allowed to advance once they're finished. They're allowed to advance when time is called. And so a lot of these students have to learn that they're going to be sitting there for that many minutes, for 90 minutes rather than 60 minutes. Don't hurry up and finish in 60 minutes and then sit there for a half hour and put your head down. That will be catastrophic to your test and your performance. Not only are you wasting that time, which is valuable, but you are blowing your momentum. I often find extended time to be a double-edged sword for kids because you do get that extra time, and I know so many students would love an extra 5 minutes per section, extra 10 minutes per section.
Especially on the ACT.
Yeah, but at the same time, you have to test for that much longer, and so the endurance trial becomes that much more grueling.
I think I was going to say that the idea of finishing first or finishing ahead of your peers or ahead of the class is sort of something that's socialized in high schools as you were more prepared, or you are smarter than the people who are still working on their tests. And so people kind of feel like it's a badge of honor, or maybe they get extra points somehow if they finish first. But you're absolutely right. It's you don't get any higher of a score if you finish the section before the time is called. And whereas the ACT used to give you a set amount of time to complete all 4 sections, and students could self-pace and manage their time individually, now for both SAT and ACT, students are locked into timing for each section at exactly 50% extra time or 100% extra time. So they will have to sit there, and it's to their advantage to make use of all that time.
Now, I'm curious about the multiple days, right? Some of our students, like 50%, typically will be tested one day, although they can test for multiple days. But I'm curious your experience working with students maybe who are going to test over multiple days, and how should they think about that? Are there any recommendations that you make for that?
Yeah, so usually there's a couple of different options for that. One is if they have 100% extra time, they'll test over 2 separate days. And so they'll have to take 2 sections for SAT, be reading and writing and language, And then both math sections, or for ACT, it'd be the first 2 sections, English and math, and then the second 2 sections, reading and science. But then there's, if they get more than that, they can sometimes have testing over 3 or multiple more days than that. And there's just a testing window that they have to complete the test in.
I've seen a lot of students with that kind of test, which is amazing because you could really strategize. They take the test after everyone else does.
Well, I'm curious, do you guys ever do where you schedule tutoring sessions on the days in between the week of?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's almost like APs, right?
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's especially valuable for students who are ADHD or who have visual impairment or processing issues where they simply cannot, they get so fatigued that they cannot focus for longer than an hour or an hour and a half. So structuring those exams separately and thinking of it as, today is my reading day. I'm going to just like go all out on reading and be completely focused for an hour and a half or 2 hours, whatever it might be. And then I get a break, 48 hours or however long it is.
Now, the only
hugely valuable
caveat that I have found is that you can't order a copy of your test. Those test information release days. If you test over multiple days, then you opt out of that. I've actually had students who the first time they test will test to get their test back. So they'll do it all in one day, knowing that successive ones they'll do over multiple days just because they want to get that first test back. But
we hope you enjoyed this video as much as we did. You'll find plenty more like it when you explore the Test and the Rest channel. Be sure to comment, share, and subscribe for a constant stream of insights into learning, education, testing, and admissions. For full podcasts and amazing resources, find us at testsandtherest.com.